The Rise of Skywalker saw the return of Emperor Palpatine, the Dark Lord of the Sith who had long been thought to be dead after Darth Vader's betrayal. In Episode 9, Palpatine reveals himself, and as the Resistance learns of his return, one significant Resistance member utters what has now become one of the most criticized lines in Star Wars.
Somehow Palpatine returned.
The main problem that fans have with this line isn't that Poe Dameron didn't have a well thought out intellectual explanation for how a Sith Lord cheated death, as the line actually makes perfect sense for Poe to say, and it would really be weird if he did somehow have a detailed answer. The problem is that this was supposedly the only explanation the movie provided regarding Palpatine's survival. And that criticism would be totally understandable, but the problem that I have with it is it's not true. You see, Palpatine's return is actually pretty well covered if we look just a little bit deeper. Let's start with this line, which is spoken in the same exact scene that we're talking about.
Dark science. Cloning. Secrets only the Sith knew.
Now, this guy isn't outright explaining what happened as if he knows the answer, but he is suggesting a possibility that builds upon what was already established when Kylo Ren visited Palpatine on Exegol in the opening sequence. So let's now shift to that scene. Here, as Kylo searches for Palpatine, we see several cloning pods being worked on by Sith cultists, we see the dead corpses of failed Snoke clones, and the decaying body of the Emperor, who is being kept alive by a massive crane that carries him around everywhere. Now, by this point, very early on in the film, we've already got an idea of what happened. Palpatine utilized cloning technology and the dark side of the Force to preserve his life force on Exegol, the hidden world of the Sith. Now, is that some super deep explanation? No, but it's also not all we get, and it serves its purpose. Now let's jump to the end of the film, where the concept of essence transfer is put on full display. And this is something that had been hinted at by Rey 2 times earlier in the film, where she transferred some of her life force to other living beings to heal them. In this scene, Palpatine drains the life force generated by Rey and Ben Solo's Force connection, their dyad, and finally he returns to full form. Thanks to the power of the dyad, he was able to do this instead of transferring his essence into a new host body, which is something he had already explained he needed to do when he told Rey he was going to transfer his spirit into her. So, we know how Palpatine has been being preserved on Exegol, and we now have at least a hint of how he was able to transfer his essence to this clone, through essence transfer. And as a bit of a side note, I think it's important to point out that the movie intentionally made Palpatine's return a bit of a mystery. It was supposed to be a dark and mysterious thing for us, just as it was for the characters. We're given enough to put some pieces together and create a reasonable explanation without gaining an intricate understanding of the story, which is something that we have been given in the supplementary materials after the movie, and something that we appear to be continuing to explore in the series that predate the sequel trilogy, like The Mandalorian. We now know that Palpatine transferred his life force to Exegol as he was falling down the Death Star shaft. His spirit was then maintained within a clone body by the Sith cultists on Exegol, who continued to build his army until it was ready to reveal itself, as we saw in The Rise of Skywalker. The final point that I want to make here is that the prequel trilogy, specifically Revenge of the Sith, actually set up Palpatine's return quite well. Whether it was intentional or not doesn't matter. His return in the sequels works in accordance with what took place in the prequels. Recall when Sidious tells Anakin the tragedy of Darth Plagueis the Wise, reflecting on the abilities of his own Sith master who had the power to cheat death. And then shortly after, when Anakin turns to the dark side, Palpatine says that he knows that he and Lord Vader can uncover the secret. The stage had been laid out by Palpatine long ago, and The Rise of Skywalker simply capitalized on that opportunity. Now, let me be clear here. I understand that there could have been a deeper, more complex explanation in the film, and that would have helped a lot of people to get past how Palpatine returned. However, the claim that Poe saying somehow Palpatine returned was the only explanation we got is flat out incorrect. There is more information, both within the film and in several materials released after Episode 9's debut. In my opinion, the film was loose with its explanation. I can admit that. I have no problem admitting that, but it did enough and it served its purpose for me. I have enjoyed the further details that we've gotten since, and I look forward to getting even more details as time goes on if they do come to us. And I think The Rise of Skywalker will benefit benefit from those additional points. If the explanation that we got simply wasn't enough for you, then that's totally fine. You don't have to like it or feel that it was sufficient in any way. You don't have to like the idea of Palpatine returning at all. You don't have to like Episode 9. That's all totally fine. But minimizing the film's explanation to somehow Palpatine returned and flat out ignoring the answers provided is simply unfair and inaccurate. And maybe there are people who truly missed these details while watching The Rise of Skywalker, which again is totally fine. I'm sure we're all guilty of that. I watch movies and shows all the time, certainly including Star Wars stuff, where I completely miss things that other people pick up on immediately. And if that's the case for you with The Rise of Skywalker, then I hope this video helped you out. But on that note, I am going to go ahead and wrap this video up here, so thank you all so much for watching. Please remember to drop a like on this video before you go, subscribe to the channel if you are new, and of course, may the Force be with you always.